Seo Duyul had received death threats in 7 languages. He had listened to rivals beg with blood in their mouths. He had watched politicians shake while pretending to negotiate. He had heard police chiefs speak respectfully into phones they thought were not being recorded. He had survived ambushes, betrayals, raids, poisoned dinners, and the quiet smiles of relatives who wanted his chair more than they wanted his life. But nothing in 46 years prepared him for the voice of a young man calling from his ex-wife's phone at 1:17 in the morning. The rain struck the windows of his Seoul penthouse like handfuls of thrown glass. Beyond the floor-to-ceiling walls, the city glittered below him, cold and brilliant, a kingdom made of neon, money, and secrets. Duyul stood barefoot on black marble, still dressed in a tailored midnight suit, his whiskey untouched on the low table beside him. Around him, 5 men waited in silence. Not bodyguards only. These were senior men, loyal men, dangerous men. Men who understood that when Seo Duyul went quiet, the room became more frightening than when other men shouted. Han Isol stood near the window with a tablet in her hand, her sharp eyes moving between the men and her boss. She was his intelligence chief, the one person in the room who dared to interrupt him when the truth required it. They had been discussing a betrayal inside one of his shipping companies when his private phone began to ring. Every man in the penthouse noticed. That phone almost never rang. Duyul looked down at the screen. The number was not saved, but the country code and the old contact trace made his chest tighten before his mind caught up. Mireya. For a moment, his face changed so slightly that only Isol saw it. 8 years had passed since Mireya Batiste walked out of his life. 8 years since she signed divorce papers with dry eyes and trembling fingers. 8 years since she refused his money, his protection, his explanation, and every question he asked except the one that mattered.
Why?
Duyul answered the call. He did not speak first. A young man's voice came through, low and strained. Are you Seo Duyul? Duyul turned slightly away from the room. Yes. My mother said I should only call you if she couldn't protect me anymore. The rain seemed louder suddenly. Duyul's fingers tightened around the phone. Who is your mother? A pause. Not hesitation.
Fear.
Mireya Batiste. The name moved through him like a blade pulled slowly from an old wound. Behind him, one of the men shifted. Duyul did not turn, but the sound stopped immediately. What happened to her? He asked. She collapsed. Someone broke into our apartment. They weren't looking for money. They were looking for documents. Duyul's eyes lifted to the black window, to his own reflection standing over Seoul like a ghost in an expensive suit. What documents? The young man inhaled. Duyul heard rain in the background. Sirens far away. A small room. Panic being held together by pride. The ones proving you're my father. Nothing moved. Not the men. Not the rain. Not even Duyul's breath. For 3 seconds, the most feared man in Seoul stood completely still, his phone glowing in his hand, while the world he had built cracked silently down the middle. Then he said, too calmly, How old are you? 20.
20.
The number struck harder than any bullet ever had. 8 years after divorce would have been betrayal. 20 years was theft. Duyul turned slowly. Every man in the penthouse looked away except Han Isol. She watched him because it was her job to watch the truth arrive before everyone else. What is your name? Duyul asked. Kaylin Batiste.
Batiste.
Not Seo. Not even hidden beneath a Korean surname. Mireya had given the boy her name and raised him outside his father's world completely. Where are you? Kaylin gave the address. A modest apartment in Yeongdongpo, far from the glittering skyline, far from the marble and guarded elevators and whiskey carts of Duyul's life. Is Mireya conscious? She keeps waking up and telling me not to call you. Then she passes out again. A sound left Duyul that was not quite a laugh and not quite pain. Even half conscious, Mireya was still protecting a secret she had already lost control of. Listen to me carefully, Kaylin, Duyul said. Lock the door. Do not open it for anyone except the emergency doctor I send and the woman named Han Isol. If anyone knocks before they arrive, you say nothing. You breathe quietly. You wait. I don't know you. No, Duyul said, and his voice lowered. But if what you said is true, You should have. The line went silent. Then Kaylin said, "She never told me to trust you. She told me to call you." The words landed clean. Duyol closed his eyes once. Only once. When he opened them, the grieving man was gone. In his place stood the boss who made Seoul's underground hold its breath. He ended the call and looked at Isol. Medical team. Private.
Now.
Full security route. No sirens. She was already moving. He looked at the senior men. The meeting is finished. One of them, an older captain named Choi Gun-taek, dared to speak. Chairman, is this a family matter or an organization matter? Duyol looked at him. Gun-taek's face drained. It is my matter, Duyol said. And until I know who entered her home, Seoul does not sleep. He walked toward the elevator. His guards moved with him. Isol caught up near the private entrance, raincoat in hand. Do you want the police contained?
No.
That surprised her. Duyol took the coat but did not put it on. I want truth first. Control second. And if the boy is lying? Duyol stepped into the elevator, his expression unreadable. Then someone taught him the most dangerous lie in Korea. The doors slid shut. For the first time in 8 years, Seo Duyol went to Mireya. And for the first time in 20 years, he went as a father who had just learned he might already be too late. The apartment did not look like a place built from fear. That was the first thing Duyol noticed. It was small, warm, and painfully ordinary. A narrow hallway. A shoe rack with 2 pairs of sneakers and 1 pair of worn cream flats. Books stacked beside the wall because the shelf was too full. A kettle on the counter. A half-finished bowl of soup. A cracked blue mug. A framed photograph of Mireya laughing at the edge of the Han River, her curls loose around her face, her eyes bright in a way Duyol had not seen since before the marriage collapsed. This was not a hideout. It was a life. And he had not been in it. Kaylin opened the door after Isol gave the agreed signal. The moment Duyol saw him, the air left his lungs. There were things DNA could prove later. There were papers, hospital records, birth dates, signatures, old lies that could be dragged into light. But blood did not wait for paperwork. The young man standing in the doorway had Mireya's skin tone warmed into deep caramel, her full mouth, her guarded softness. But the eyes were Duyol's.
So was the jaw.
So was the stillness. The habit of standing slightly angled, one shoulder closer to the exit. The quiet measuring of everyone in the hallway before deciding who was danger. Kaylin stared back at him with the same controlled dislike Duyol had once seen in mirrors. You're taller than I expected, Kaylin said. Duyol almost answered. You look like me. He did not. Where is she? Kaylin stepped aside, but did not lower his guard. In the bedroom, Mireya lay against pillows, pale beneath her warm skin, one hand pressed to her ribs as a private doctor checked her pulse. Her curls were tied back with a scarf. She wore a cream knit dress, the kind of simple, elegant thing she had always chosen when she wanted to look calm, even while the world burned. Her eyes opened before Duyol reached the bed. For a moment, neither of them spoke. 8 years disappeared. So did the divorce court, the unsigned letters. The final morning when she had packed one suitcase and refused to cry until the elevator doors closed between them. Duyol remembered loving her like a man standing too close to the sun. Mireya remembered leaving him because love had not been enough to make his world safe. Then her gaze shifted past him to Kaylin, and fear returned. You called him, she whispered. Kaylin's mouth tightened. Someone broke into our home. You collapsed. I found the note. Her face changed. Duyol heard that. The note. Mireya closed her eyes. Kaylin reached into his pocket and unfolded a paper so old the creases had softened. He handed it to Duyol. The handwriting was Mireya's. If I cannot protect you anymore, call Seo Duyol. Tell him the truth. Do not trust anyone from his family before you trust him. Duyol read it twice. Then he looked at Mireya. Tell me this is not true. Her lips parted, but nothing came out.
Do you step it closer?
His voice did not rise. It did not need to. Tell me that boy is not mine. Mireya's eyes filled, but she did not look away. I had your child, Duyol. The doctor stopped moving. Isol went still near the door. Kaylin's expression hardened, as if hearing the words aloud hurt more than reading them. Duyel stared at Mireia, and every year he had lost seemed to stand between them like a line of ghosts. You had my child, he said slowly, and said nothing? Mireia pushed herself upright despite the doctor's protest. I had your child, she said, voice shaking but fierce, and I kept him alive.
Duyel flinched.
It was small, but Kaelin saw it. Duyel turned away, one hand lifting to his mouth as if he could physically hold back the rage, the grief, the questions. When he turned back, the boss was fighting the husband inside him. 20 years, Mireia. I know.
No.
You do not get to say that like we misplaced a photograph. His voice finally cracked at the edge. 20 years. First words. First steps. Fever nights. Birthdays. Schools.
Fights.
The first time he asked where his father was. 20 years. Kaelin looked away. Mireia's tears slipped free. I tried to tell you. When? Before he was born.
Duyel froze.
Mireia looked toward the kitchen, toward the cabinet under the sink. There's a loose panel behind the cleaning supplies. The box is there. Isol moved first. She crouched, opened the cabinet, pulled out bottles, found the panel, and removed a narrow metal box wrapped in cloth. Mireia looked exhausted. They took some of it. Not all. Duyel opened the box on the small kitchen table. Inside were old hospital records, a birth bracelet, photographs, a picture of a younger Mireia standing beside the sea, visibly pregnant beneath a loose white dress, her face beautiful and terrified. There were letters too, some yellowed with age, tied with a faded ribbon. Duyel lifted one. His name was on the envelope.
Seu Duyel.
Written in Mireia's hand. Unsent. Or returned. Or stolen. His fingers trembled once before he forced them still. Kaelin watched him from across the room. You really didn't know. It was not a question. Duyel looked at his son. His son. The word felt too large to touch. No, he said. I did not, Mireia whispered. I believed you did. Duyel turned sharply. She looked ashamed now. Not guilty only. Haunted. I believed you chose not to come. Duyel's face changed. What did they give you? Mireia looked at him then, and 20 years of silence finally began to bleed. A letter. Isol looked up from the box. Duyel asked, From me? Mireia nodded. It said you had responsibilities. That a child with me would weaken your position. That if I cared about you at all, I would disappear before your family decided to handle it less kindly. Duyel did not move. The apartment seemed to tilt. I never wrote that. I know that now, Mireia said. But I was 22, pregnant, alone, and your sister came to me with men outside my door. Duyel's eyes went dark. Yeorin. Mireia did not answer. She did not have to. The name entered the apartment like poison. Duyel looked down at the box again. Half the letters were gone. The break-in had not been random. Someone had returned to erase what should have stayed buried. He picked up one of the old envelopes and turned it toward the light. The seal had been opened, then resealed. His voice became quiet enough to frighten everyone. This is not over. Mireia reached for him weakly. Duyel, don't bring war to my son's door. He looked at her hand. Once, that hand had worn his ring. Now it trembled above a blanket in a room he had never paid for, in a life he had never protected. He did not take it, not because he did not want to, because he did not know if he still had the right. He is already standing in the doorway of my war, Duyel said. You just spent 20 years pretending he was not. Before Seoul feared Co. Duyel, Mireia Baptiste had met him bleeding in a jazz cafe in Busan. He was 25 then, too proud to limp and too angry to ask for help. His shirt was torn under his jacket, his knuckles split, one eye bruising dark beneath the low amber lights. Outside, rain rolled down the glass. Inside, an old saxophone record played softly while Mireia wiped tables after closing. She should have been afraid. Instead, she looked at him and said, You're dripping blood on my floor. Duyel had stared at her, startled by the insult. Do you speak to all customers like that? Only the ones who arrive looking like unfinished crime scenes. He almost smiled. Almost. She pointed to a chair. Sit down before you fall down. I don't fall.
Good.
Then sitting should be easy. That was how it began. Not with roses. Not with luxury. Not with the heavy machinery of fate. With a wounded man, a stubborn woman, and rain. Mireya was in Korea on a restoration scholarship, studying old textiles and traditional dyeing techniques while working nights in the cafe to pay for what her grant did not cover. She was warm but not naive, kind but not foolish. She had grown up in New Orleans with a mother who taught music and a grandmother who taught her that charm without character was just decoration. Duyul did not tell her who his family was. Not at first. He told her his name. He told her he worked for a trading company. He told her nothing else. But Mireya had always known there was darkness behind him. It sat in the way men looked away when he entered. It lived in the black car that sometimes waited across the street. It spoke through the bruises he refused to explain. Still, there were nights when he seemed almost young with her. They ate fish cakes by the harbor. They rode buses with no destination. He bought her cheap gloves from a street vendor when her hands turned cold, then pretended he had not noticed. She kept them even when the stitching came loose. She showed him fabrics dyed with persimmon and indigo. He showed her a view of the city from a rooftop where no one bothered them. She told him about New Orleans rain. He told her almost nothing about his childhood, but one night he admitted he hated his father's house because everyone there spoke like affection was a weakness. Mireya looked at him then and said, "Maybe that's why you don't know what to do when someone is gentle with you." Duyul had gone quiet. Then he kissed her like a man who had been waiting his whole life for someone to name his hunger. For 1 year, they belonged to each other in secret. Then his father died. Everything changed. Duyul was pulled back to Seoul, into the brutal machinery of inheritance, loyalty, and blood. Phone calls became shorter. Visits became dangerous. His voice grew colder, not toward her, but toward the world pressing around him. Mireya discovered she was pregnant 2 weeks after he stopped calling regularly. She wrote him a letter first, then another. Then she went to Seoul. She never reached him. Seo Yeorin met her in a private tea room overlooking the city. Elegant, composed, with pearls at her throat and cruelty hidden behind perfect manners. "You are very beautiful," Yeorin had said. "I understand the distraction." Mireya placed both hands protectively over her stomach. "I need to speak with Duyul." "No," Yeorin said gently. "You need to understand who he has become." She slid a letter across the table. Mireya recognized Duyul's name at the bottom. Not his hand, though she did not know that then. Not his voice, though pain made doubt sound like truth. The letter said he could not acknowledge her. It said a child would endanger everything. It said if she loved him, she would disappear. Mireya read it once. Then again. The room blurred. Yeorin leaned closer. "My brother is not a cafe boy anymore. If our enemies learn about you, they will use you. If they learn about the child, they will remove it. I am offering mercy while mercy is still possible." That night, Mireya left Seoul. She gave birth months later under her own surname, Kalen Batiste. No father listed. Years passed. She raised him on lullabies, hard work, and careful lies. Then, impossibly, she met Duyul again. He was no longer the bleeding young man in the cafe. He was Seo Duyul, polished and lethal, surrounded by men who obeyed him before he spoke. But sometimes, when he looked at her, she saw the boy from Busan trapped behind the boss's eyes. They married. She told herself she would reveal Kalen when it was safe. But safety never came. There was always a threat, a funeral, a betrayal, a gunshot in the distance, a bodyguard murmuring bad news into Duyul's ear. The longer she waited, the larger the truth became. The larger the truth became, the more impossible it felt to confess. Their marriage filled with love they could not name and secrets they could not survive. 8 years ago, Mireya left. Duyul let her go because he thought she had stopped loving him. Mireya left because she had never stopped. Now, in the small apartment with rain tapping against the windows, Duyul held the forged letter under the kitchen light. He read the words that had stolen his son. Then he looked at Mireya. "This is not my handwriting." Mireya covered her mouth as if the confirmation physically hurt. Kalen stood in the doorway, 20 years old, silent and rigid, watching both parents collapse under the weight of a lie that had raised him. Duyul folded the letter with terrifying care. Then he looked toward the city. Somewhere in Seoul, Seo Yeorin still believed the past was buried. Duyul's voice was almost calm. Almost. She should have burned this when she had the chance. The DNA test was unnecessary. Everyone in the room already knew. Still, Han Isil arranged it before sunrise because truth became harder to kill when it had paperwork attached to it. By 7 in the morning, the private laboratory had collected samples under armed supervision. By noon, the confirmation arrived on Isil's encrypted tablet. Probability of paternity, 99.9998%. Seo Duyul read the number once. Then he read it again. Kalen stood across the room with his arms folded, pretending not to care, but his jaw was tight enough to hurt. Mireya sat on the edge of the sofa wrapped in a blanket, her face drained from the night before. The modest apartment looked smaller beneath the presence of Duyul's world. 2 guards outside the door. Isil near the kitchen. A doctor packing medical supplies by the window. Black cars waiting below. All of it made Kalen feel like his home had been invaded by rich shadows. Duyul lowered the tablet. "You are my son." Kalen gave a short, humorless laugh. "Congratulations. You found out 20 years late." Mireya closed her eyes. Duyul did not react with anger. That irritated Kalen more. He had expected fury.
Commands. Threats.
Something that would confirm the monster he had built in his imagination. Instead, Duyul looked wounded. That was worse. "I did not know," Duyul said. Kalen stepped forward. "And that fixes it?"
"No. Good.
"At least we agree on something." "Kalen," Mireya said softly. He turned to her, pain flashing across his face.
"No.
You don't get to say my name like I'm being rude to a guest. This is not a guest. This is the man I spent my whole life thinking abandoned us." Duyul's eyes shifted to Mireya. She looked down. Kalen saw that look and hated it. He hated the guilt in her face, hated the grief in Duyul's, hated the fact that both of them suddenly seemed more human than he was ready for them to be.
Duyul Spock Carefully.
"What did she tell you about me?" "That you were dangerous." "That was true." "That you had enemies." "That was also true." "That you chose your world over us." Duyul went still. Kalen's voice hardened. "Was that true?" Mireya whispered. "Kalen."
"No.
"I want him to answer." Duyul looked at the young man in front of him. The son he had never held, never named, never protected. He wanted to say no. He wanted to say he would have come, that he would have burned cities to find them, that if he had known, nothing could have stopped him. But another truth stood behind that one. 20 years ago, he had already been walking toward blood, toward power, toward the kind of life that made Mireya afraid to speak. So he answered with the only honesty he had left. "I did not choose to abandon you because I did not know you existed. But I did choose a life that made your mother believe silence was safer than truth." Kalen had no reply ready for that. It was too clean, too responsible, too unlike the villain he needed Duyul to be. He looked away. Duyul placed the tablet on the table. "I want you both moved somewhere secure." "No," Mireya said immediately. His eyes moved to her. She sat straighter despite her exhaustion. "Not one of your glass towers. Not one of your guarded cages. I will not wake up behind locked doors controlled by your men. Someone broke into your apartment. And someone from your family may have sent them. That is why you need protection." "No," Kalen said. "That is why we need distance." Duyul turned to him. "Distance will not protect you. Neither did your name." That landed. Isil looked down at her tablet to hide the flicker of approval in her eyes. The boy had Duyul's sharpness, but Mireya's courage. Dangerous combination. Duyul adjusted his cuff slowly. It was a habit of control, a way of giving his temper something small to do. "I am not asking you to trust me," he said. "I am asking you to understand that people who erased you for 20 years may not politely stop because we discovered the truth." Kalen looked toward the window. Seoul moved outside like nothing had happened. "I have work tonight." Mireya stared at him.
"Kalen, no."
"I'm not hiding." "You were almost taken from me before you were born," she said, voice shaking. "Please don't make me watch it happen now." His anger faltered. That was the thing about his mother. She never begged. Not through unpaid bills. Not through sickness. Not through nights when she thought he was asleep and cried quietly in the bathroom. If Mireia begged, the fear was real. Duyal saw the change in him. "Where do you work?" he asked. Kaylin hesitated.
A Restoration Garage Mulle.
Old bikes. Custom engines. Metalwork. Something crossed Duyal's face. Not judgment. Recognition. "You build things. I fix what other people throw away." The words hung between them. Mireia looked at her son. Duyal looked at his. For one brief second nobody spoke. Then Isol's tablet chimed. She read quickly, and her expression sharpened. Duyal noticed at once. What? The break-in wasn't done by street thieves. The lock was opened with a restricted bypass tool. Professional.
Clean.
They knew the camera blind spot in the hallway. Inside knowledge? Likely. And they ignored the cash drawer, jewelry, electronics. They opened 2 cabinets, the bedroom closet and the kitchen wall panel. Mireia went pale. Kaylin's face tightened. They knew about the box. Isol nodded. Not guessed. Knew. Duyal's voice became quiet. Whoever sent them was not trying to discover the truth. He looked at the old letters on the table. They already knew it. Isol finished the thought. They were trying to erase it. The Grand Orium Hotel did not advertise that CO Duyal owned it. It did not have to. The building understood him. The staff understood him. The private elevator opened only after 3 separate security confirmations, and the top-floor conference room had no cameras anyone outside Duyal's circle could access. CO Yeorin arrived at exactly 4 o'clock in an ivory suit and black pearl earrings, carrying herself with the calm of a woman who had never needed to raise her voice to ruin a life. She was 51, elegant in the way expensive knives were elegant. Every movement polished. Every smile measured. She had their father's eyes, but none of Duyal's restraint. Her cruelty came dressed as tradition. "Brother," she said, stepping into the room. "You look tired." Duyal stood near the window, soul spread beneath him in gray, afternoon light. Han Isol sat at the table with a closed folder in front of her. 2 senior captains stood by the door. Yeorin looked around once and understood this was not a family visit. Still, she smiled. "If this is about Mireia, I hope you are being careful." Duyal did not turn. Careful with what? With old attachments. She removed her gloves finger by finger. Women from the past often return when power becomes lonely. Isol's gaze lowered to the folder. Duyal finally faced his sister. "I did not say," she returned. Yeorin paused for less than half a breath. Only Isol caught it. Yeorin recovered. "You would not call me here unless she had." Duyal walked to the table and placed the forged letter down between them. Yeorin looked at it. Not long enough for surprise. Too long for ignorance. "Do you recognize it?" Duyal asked.
No.
"Read it." "I do not need to read old drama written by a woman who wanted more from you than you could give." His eyes sharpened. "I said read it." The room cooled. Yeorin picked up the letter with a faint sigh, as if humoring a child. Her eyes moved over the page. Her expression did not change. "Painful," she said. "But many painful things are true. This is not my handwriting." Then perhaps she forged it. Duyal smiled slightly. It was not warmth. Mireia forged a letter to herself, threatening herself, then kept it hidden for 20 years in case one day she could use it to make herself look guilty. Yeorin placed the letter down. "You loved her too much. That was always the problem." "No," Duyal said. "The problem is that you knew about her before I said her name today." Yeorin's eyes lifted. "And you knew about the boy." For the first time, something real moved across her face. Not fear. Annoyance. "I know many things." "How old is he?" She looked away toward the skyline. "Does it matter?"
Do you step it closer?
"How old is he, Yeorin?" She smiled. Old enough to be dangerous if handled emotionally. The 2 captains exchanged a glance. Duyal's voice dropped. "I did not tell you his age." Silence. There it was.
Small.
Elegant. Fatal. Yeorin knew it too. Her smile thinned. "You think this is a courtroom?"
No.
"In a courtroom, you would have more protection." She laughed softly. "You are upset. I understand. But do not let sentiment blind you to reality." A grown son appearing now creates instability. Men will ask questions. Rivals will test him. Our own people will wonder whether he is blood, bait, or burden. He is my son. He is a liability. Duyul's hand struck the table so hard the letter jumped. No one moved. Yeorin's eyes widened just enough. Do not call my son a liability again. The words were not shouted. That made them worse. Yeorin leaned back. Her elegance returned like armor. You always were weak where that woman was concerned. Father saw it.
I saw it.
She made you dream of being soft. She made me human. She made you vulnerable. And you made a child fatherless to protect a chair that was never yours. Her jaw tightened. There it was. The truth beneath the pearls. Duyul looked to Isol. Isol opened the folder. 20 years ago, 3 payments were made from a shell account connected to Madame Sio's private office. The recipients were men later identified near Miss Batiste's residence in Busan and Seoul. One of those men was killed 6 years later in Daegu. Another runs private security in Incheon. The third vanished. Yeorin did not look at Isol. She looked at Duyul. You are using staff to investigate your own blood now. You stopped being my blood when you threatened mine. For the first time, Yeorin's composure cracked into anger. I protected this family. No, Duyul said. You protected your place in it. The door opened. A younger aide entered quickly and whispered something to Isol. Her expression changed at once. Duyul turned. What? Isol stood. Kaylin left the apartment. Mireya had been moved to a temporary medical suite under guard, but Kaylin had refused to stay. He had slipped out through the service stairs of the building, shaking one of Duyul's younger guards who had underestimated him. He went to work? Duyul asked. Likely. Yeorin smiled faintly. Duyul saw it. That faint, satisfied curve. The last restraint inside him went cold. He stepped toward her, close enough now that even she had to lift her chin. If anything happens to him, I will not ask whether you were involved. I will begin with the assumption that you were and work backward. Yeorin's smile faded. Duyul turned to Isol. Find my son. Kaylin knew he was being followed 3 blocks after leaving the garage. Not because the men were careless. Because he was his mother's son. Mireya had taught him ordinary survival as if it were manners. Never walk with both ears covered. Watch reflections in dark windows. Cross early if footsteps match yours too long. Do not lead danger home. Do not run until running will help. So Kaylin kept walking through the damp muddy streets, past shuttered metal workshops and noodle shops washing steam into the cold night. His backpack sat heavy over one shoulder. Grease marked one sleeve. His hands smelled faintly of engine oil. He should have stayed with his mother.
He knew that now.
But anger had pushed him out. Anger at her, at Duyul, at guards who spoke into cuffs, at the sudden discovery that his life had been shaped by people rich enough to erase him. He turned left. The footsteps turned too.
2 men.
Maybe 3. Clean shoes. Wrong for this neighborhood. Umbrellas held too low. Not drunk. Not lost. Kaylin's heartbeat changed rhythm, but his pace did not. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. He answered without speaking. Duyul's voice came through. Where are you? Kaylin almost hung up. Then he saw the reflection in a motorbike mirror. A black van rolling slowly behind him with no headlights.
His mouth went dry.
Mully, he said.
Stone sharpened.
Exact street. I don't know. Kaylin. The sound of his name in Duyul's voice was strange. Commanding, yes. But afraid too. The van sped up. Kaylin ran. The first man lunged for him near a closed welding shop. Kaylin ducked under his arm and swung his backpack hard into the man's face. Something cracked, not bone maybe, but enough. He bolted down a side alley, shoes splashing through oily puddles. Kaylin, Duyul shouted through the phone. They're trying to take me. Keep the line open. Kaylin heard movement behind him.
Fast.
Professional. He cut through a market passage, knocking over a stack of plastic crates. A woman screamed from somewhere upstairs. The van braked at the far entrance, blocking the alley mouth.
He was trapped.
For 1 second, panic almost took him. Then he saw the roll-up door of an old machine shop half open. He dropped, slid under it, and landed hard on concrete. The phone skidded from his hand. He grabbed a metal pipe from beside a workbench and backed into the shadows. The first attacker ducked under the door. Kalen swung. The pipe connected with the man's shoulder. The attacker grunted, but did not fall. He came forward with controlled force, not trying to beat Kalen bloody, only trying to restrain him. That frightened Kalen more. They did not want him dead. They wanted him useful. The second man entered. Kalen backed up until his spine hit a work table. Then headlights flooded the shop. Not from outside. From behind. A black sedan had smashed through the flimsy rear gate, stopping inches from a stack of steel drums. Men poured out with weapons drawn. And then Co. Duyel stepped from the passenger side into the harsh, white glare. He wore no coat. Rain darkened his suit. His face was calm in the way storms were calm from a distance. The attackers froze. Kalen stood panting, pipe still in hand, seeing for the first time what his father truly was. Not the wounded man from his mother's stories. Not the absent villain from childhood. Something colder. Larger. A man whose arrival changed the rules of the room. Duyel looked at the attackers. "Leave the boy." One man reached for something inside his jacket. He did not finish. Duyel's guards moved faster. Within seconds, both attackers were on the ground, disarmed and pinned. It happened brutally but efficiently, without wasted rage. Duyel walked past them and stopped in front of Kalen. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Duyel looked at the pipe in Kalen's hands. "You fight badly." Kalen stared at him. Duyel removed the pipe gently from his grip. "But you do not freeze. That matters." The absurdity of it almost made Kalen laugh. Almost. His hands began to shake now that he no longer needed them steady. Duyel saw and removed his suit jacket, placing it around Kalen's shoulders. Kalen stiffened.
"I fine."
"No," Duyel said. "You are alive. That is not the same thing." Kalen looked away, furious at the sting in his eyes. Duyel lowered his voice. "You do not have to be brave for me." Kalen swallowed hard. "I wasn't."
"Do you waited?"
"I was being brave for her. Mireia." The word did not need to be spoken. Duyel's face changed. Something in him bent under the weight of it. The realization that his son had spent 20 years being the man in Mireia's life because Duyel had not been there to carry anything. Behind them, Isel crouched beside one captured attacker. She searched his jacket and found a slim phone, no contacts, one outgoing message. Package cited. Awaiting transfer. Her eyes hardened. She showed Duyel the screen. "Not a street grab," she said. "A custody move." Duyel looked at the attacker. "Who sent you?" The man said nothing. Duyel crouched until they were eye level. "I am going to ask once because my son is standing here." The word son changed the air. Kalen looked at him sharply. Duyel continued, voice soft. "Who sent you?" The attacker's gaze flicked away. Not toward Duyel. Toward the phone in Isel's hand. Isel understood first. She checked the hidden routing code attached to the message. Her face went still. It came through a CO family relay.
"Duyel sotod."
Rain hammered the broken rear gate. Somewhere outside, sirens began to rise in the distance. Kalen pulled the jacket tighter around himself despite trying not to. Duyel looked at him, then at the men who had tried to take him, then toward the city where his sister still breathed freely. His voice was quiet. "She did not just hide my son." No one interrupted. She raised him in danger and called it family loyalty. Duyel turned to Isel. "Take him to Mireia. Double the protection. No one from my bloodline gets within 10 floors of them." "And Yorin?" Duyel looked out into the rain. "Find every record connected to her from 20 years ago. Every payment. Every dead messenger. Every forged document. Every man she ever hired to scare a pregnant woman into silence." His eyes darkened. "Tonight, my sister learns the difference between burying a secret and burying herself." Mireia did not cry when Kalen returned. That frightened him more than tears would have. She stood in the doorway of the private medical suite, wrapped in a robe too expensive to belong to her, one hand gripping the frame as if her legs might fail. Behind her, Seoul glowed through high windows, rich and cold, a city she had spent 20 years hiding inside. When she saw Duyel's jacket around Kaylin's shoulders, her face changed. Not relief, only recognition. She had seen that jacket before. Not the exact one, but the shape of it. The black wool. The faint scent of rain and cedar. The kind of clothing men wore when they could buy safety, but could not create peace. Were you hurt? She asked. Kaylin shook his head.
No.
Her eyes moved to Duyel. He did not defend himself. He did not explain. He simply said, they tried to take him. Mireya's hand went to her mouth. Kaylin hated how small she looked in that moment. His mother had always been strong in ways that did not ask for applause. She fixed leaking taps with borrowed tools. She stretched groceries into meals. She worked while sick. She smiled at school meetings with tired eyes and perfect posture. Now she looked like a woman finally, seeing the nightmare she had outrun reach the door. Kaylin stepped toward her. Tell me everything. Mireya went still. No more pieces, he said. No more soft version. No more I was protecting you. I need to know what my life actually was. Duyel stood near the window. He did not move closer. For once, he seemed to understand that his presence was not the center of the room. Mireya sat on the edge of the sofa. Kaylin remained standing. She looked at his face, the son she had raised, the child she had hidden, the young man who now carried the anger she had tried to spare him. I met your father before he became Co. Duyel, she said quietly. At least, before the world knew him that way. Kaylin's jaw tightened. He was different then? He was already dangerous, she said. But not cruel.
Not to me.
Duyel looked down. Mireya continued. She told him about Busan, the jazz cafe, the night Duyel came in bleeding and proud. She told him about fish cakes by the harbor, cheap gloves, rain, laughter, and the impossible softness she had found in a man trained to be hard. Then she told him about the pregnancy. Her voice changed there. I was scared, but I was happy too. I thought your father would be scared with me. I thought we would be scared together. Kaylin's face tightened, but he said nothing. I wrote to him. I came to Seoul. I tried to reach him. Yeorin stopped you. Mireya nodded. She gave me a letter. She said it was from him. She said he could not acknowledge me. She said a child would weaken his position. She said his enemies would use us, and his family would remove us, if I did not disappear quietly. Kaylin looked at Duyel. Did you know she came? No, Duyel said. Never. The answer was immediate, not polished, not strategic. That made it harder to reject. Mireya folded her hands. I believed the letter because I was young, pregnant, and alone. And because some part of me already knew his world could be that cruel. Kaylin's voice sharpened. Then years later you married him. Yes. While I was alive. Yes. While he still didn't know. Mireya flinched. Kaylin laughed once, bitterly. How does that make sense? It doesn't, she said. Not cleanly. Try. She looked at Duyel, then back at her son. When I saw him again, I saw the boy I loved wearing the face of the world I feared. The room went silent. I told myself I would tell him when it was safe. But every time I got close, something happened. A shooting. A funeral. A threat. Men whispering in his ear. Blood on someone's cuff. News reports about businesses that were not really businesses. And I would think, not yet.
Not now.
Not while Kaylin can still be invisible. Kaylin's eyes filled, but anger kept the tears from falling. So you let me hate him? Mireya's voice broke. Yes. Duyel closed his eyes. Kaylin stepped back, as if the truth had touched him physically. You let me think my father knew about me, and left. Mireya nodded through tears. Because hatred was easier than letting you miss him. That sentence hit all three of them differently. Kaylin turned away. Duyel placed a hand against the window, his reflection faint in the glass. For 20 years, his son had not simply grown up without him. His son had grown up protected from longing by a lie. Mireya whispered, I was wrong. I was scared. I was trying to keep you alive, and I made choices that hurt you. I can say I did it out of love, but love does not erase the damage. Kaylin wiped his face angrily. I don't know what I'm supposed to do with that. Nothing tonight, Mireya said. You don't owe either of us peace tonight.
Duyal looked at her then.
For the first time since the call, he saw not the woman who stole his fatherhood, but the terrified young mother who had been cornered by his family, then trapped by his life. He left before Kaelin could see him break. In the hall, he took out one of the hotel notepads from the side table and wrote with a hand steadier than he felt. Then he slid the note under Kaelin's door. Kaelin found it an hour later. It contained one sentence. I cannot ask you to call me father, but I will spend the rest of my life becoming someone who deserved to hear it. Kaelin read it twice. Then he folded it carefully and did not throw it away. Seo Yeorin chose a private gallery in Seongsu because she understood the power of beautiful rooms. People behaved differently under expensive lighting. They lowered their voices near priceless art. They became careful around marble sculptures and silk wall panels, as if elegance itself could make cruelty seem civilized. Mireya knew it was a trap before she stepped inside.
She went anyway.
Kaelin walked beside her in a dark coat Duyal had sent, and he had almost refused. He wore it now only because Mireya had looked cold when he tried to return it. Duyal had warned them not to go. Mireya had answered, I have been hiding from that woman for 20 years. I am tired of giving her rooms I am afraid to enter. So they came. Yeorin waited beneath a massive abstract painting, her ivory suit immaculate, her smile soft enough to fool strangers. Mireya, she said, you have aged beautifully. Mireya did not smile. You have not changed at all. Yeorin's eyes flickered. Then she turned to Kaelin. And this is the boy. The man, Kaelin said. Yeorin laughed gently. Of course. She gestured to a table where documents waited beside tea no one touched. I ask you here because conflict helps no one. You exist. That cannot be undone. So we must decide how to handle it with dignity. Kaelin looked at the papers. Dignity usually doesn't need a signature. Yeorin's smile cooled. Mireya stepped forward and read the top page. Her face hardened. Kaelin took it from her. The document claimed Mireya had knowingly concealed Kaelin's paternity for financial leverage. It stated that she had confused timelines, manipulated records, and now wished to correct the misunderstanding by allowing the Seo family to restore order. Kaelin read silently. Then he looked up. You want me to sign this? I want you to be protected. From who? From the consequences of your mother's choices. Mireya's hand tightened. Yeorin continued smoothly. You are young. You do not understand what it means to be attached to a family like ours. Your father's name can give you education, protection, wealth, influence. But only if your introduction is managed properly. A scandal helps no one. And my mother? She will be taken care of. The way she said it made the words sound like a threat. Kaelin smiled faintly, but there was no humor in it. So, I become Seo Kaelin, air-shaped enough to be useful, quiet enough to be controlled, and my mother becomes the lying woman you generously forgave. Yeorin's eyes sharpened. You have his tongue. No, Kaelin said. I have hers. He tore the document once. Then again. The sound was small but satisfying. Yeorin's guards moved half a step. Mireya moved in front of her son. Then a voice cut through the gallery. Take another step and lose the leg. Duyal entered from the shadowed hall, Han Isul behind him, his expression calm enough to chill the room. Yeorin did not look surprised. You followed them. I listened. How dramatic. How familiar, Duyal said. You cornered Mireya once with paper and threats. I wanted to see if age had made you creative. Kaelin looked at him, startled despite himself. Duyal walked to the torn contract, picked up one piece, and read it. His face did not change. That was how Mireya knew he was furious. He looked at his sister. You stole my son from me. Now you want to steal his mother from him. Yeorin folded her hands. I am trying to prevent a succession crisis.
No.
You're trying to write yourself out of a crime. Her smile vanished. Careful, brother.
Do you step it closer?
Yeorin's voice lowered. If you acknowledge him publicly, everything becomes unstable. The old accounts, the offshore routes, the names you buried, the officers you bought. I know enough to make your beautiful empire bleed. Duyal studied her. There it was. The final truth. She was not protecting the family.
She was holding it hostage.
Mireya whispered. Duyul, don't. Not because she wanted him to spare Yeorin. Because she feared what war would cost Kaelin. Duyul looked at her, then at his son. For 20 years, power had taken from him. Now power demanded payment to return what it had stolen. He turned back to Yeorin. You think I will choose the Empire? You always have. He smiled then, and for the first time, she looked uncertain. That was before I knew what it cost. The rooftop restaurant had been closed to the public for 3 years. Duyul opened it for one night. Rain fell hard over Seoul, streaking the glass walls, blurring the city into silver and black. Around the long table sat the senior figures of the CO syndicate, captains, financiers, family elders, men and women who had survived by knowing when to kneel and when to bite. Yeorin arrived last. She wore red. Duyul almost admired the arrogance. Mireya and Kaelin were not at the table. That was deliberate. Duyul would not turn their pain into entertainment for the people who had benefited from silence. Han Isel stood behind him with 3 folders, 1 tablet, and the patience of an executioner. Yeorin took her seat. If this is meant to frighten me, it is excessive. Duyul said, this is not about fear. Then what? Record. Isel tapped the tablet. A screen lit up behind him. The first image appeared. A scanned bank transfer from 20 years earlier. Then another. Then photographs. Men outside Mireya's old apartment. A private clinic record. A forged letter enlarged beside samples of Duyul's true handwriting. Security logs from the recent break-in. The relay code from the message sent during Kaelin's attempted abduction. The room changed slowly. Powerful people understood evidence the way wolves understood blood. Yeorin's face remained composed until Isul played the audio. Her own voice filled the room from a recording captured earlier in the gallery. If you acknowledge him publicly, everything becomes unstable. The old accounts, the offshore routes, the names you buried, the officers you bought. One captain looked at another. A family elder leaned back. Yeorin's fingers curled once against the table.
Duyul spoke calmly.
My sister created a hidden bloodline crisis 20 years ago. She threatened a pregnant woman. She forged my name. She concealed my son. Last night, she arranged an attempted transfer of that son into family custody without my consent. Yeorin stood. I protected this family from weakness. Duyul looked at her. You protected your chair. Her face flushed. You think they will support you if you drag us into light? You think they will clap because you discovered fatherhood? No, Duyul said. I think they will support survival. He nodded to Isul. New documents appeared. Legal separation orders. Asset transfers. Clean businesses removed from syndicate structures. Compromised accounts frozen. Old routes cut. Names moved beyond Yeorin's reach. A financier at the end of the table stared. You've been dismantling access. For 48 hours, Duyul said. Yeorin went pale. You cannot run the family without me. I know. That stunned the room more than rage would have. Duyul placed both hands on the table. So, I am not running it as it was. No one spoke. I am removing my legitimate assets from family control. The hotels, security firms, restoration holdings, shipping fronts that operate cleanly, those leave with me. The criminal routes you love so much can rot with whoever still wants to bleed for them. Yeorin whispered, You are throwing away power for a woman who lied to you. Duyul's eyes hardened.
No.
I am throwing away the lie that power was worth losing them. The room held its breath. A senior captain named Beck Junik slowly removed the CO family pin from his lapel and placed it on the table. I will not follow Madam CO. One by one, others followed. Not all, but enough. Yeorin looked around and understood too late that Duyul had not come to beg loyalty. He had come to show them she was a liability. Her threats could burn everyone. His exit could save them. That was the kind of choice syndicate people understood. Duyul looked at his sister one last time. You will live. You will keep enough money to remain elegant. You will have no access to my son, to Mireya, to my businesses, or to any person who still values breathing comfortably. Yeorin's lips trembled with rage. And if I refuse? Duyul leaned close. Then I stop being generous. He left before she could answer. Downstairs, Mireya waited in the back of a quiet car with Kaylin beside her. She looked up when Duyul entered. He looked exhausted, not triumphant, not relieved. Just emptied. Kaylin studied his face. What happened? Duyul sat across from them, rainwater dark on his collar. I cannot recover 20 years, he said. But tonight I made sure no one profits from stealing them. Mireya's eyes filled. Kaylin looked out the window. For the first time, he did not move away when Duyul sat near him. Kaylin did not call him father. Duyul did not ask. Their first breakfast was terrible. They sat across from each other in a quiet restaurant before opening hours, surrounded by empty tables and too many unsaid things. Duyul ordered black coffee. Kaylin ordered tea and toast, then looked offended when Duyul paid. I have money, Kaylin said. I know. Then don't do that.
Duyul nodded.
Next time you pay. Kaylin blinked. Next time? If you agree. He did not answer immediately, but the next week he came. That became the beginning. Not forgiveness. Not family. A beginning. Every Thursday morning they met. Sometimes they spoke. Sometimes they sat in silence, so awkward even the waiters seemed uncomfortable. Duyul learned that Kaylin hated being asked vague questions. Kaylin learned that Duyul had no idea how to make small talk and treated normal conversation like a negotiation with unstable diplomats. Slowly, the space between them changed. Kaylin took him to the workshop one rainy afternoon. He showed him an old motorcycle he had rebuilt from scrap parts, explaining the engine with careful intensity. Duyul listened like every word mattered because it did. You actually care? Kaylin asked suddenly. Duyul looked at the machine. I care that your hands know how to make broken things move again. Kaylin looked away. That night, Duyul sat alone in his penthouse and cried without sound. Mireya did not move back into his life quickly either. She accepted protection, but not possession. She accepted apologies, but not excuses. She made it clear that the truth coming out did not erase the years she carried alone. One evening, Duyul came to her apartment without guards inside, carrying nothing expensive. Just a small paper bag of roasted chestnuts from a street vendor they had loved in Busan. Mireya opened the door and stared at it. You remembered. I forgot many things I should have known, he said. I remember useless things perfectly. She let him in. They sat at her small kitchen table, peeling chestnuts in silence. Finally, Duyul said, I am sorry. Mireya looked tired. You've said that.
No.
I apologized for what I lost. For what was taken from me. That was selfish. He looked at her properly. I am sorry that my life made truth dangerous. I am sorry that loving me meant calculating exits. I am sorry you had to protect our son from my name. Her eyes filled. I should have told you. Yes, he said. You should have. She flinched, but he continued. And I should have been the kind of man you could tell. That broke her. Not loudly. Not dramatically. She simply covered her face, and 20 years of strength gave way. Duyul did not touch her until she reached for him. When she did, he held her like someone holding the only honest thing left in his world. 1 year later, Kaylin graduated from his design program. The ceremony was held in a bright university hall, ordinary and beautiful in ways Duyul had never known how to want. Parents carried flowers. Students laughed too loudly. Someone's grandmother cried before the names even began. Mireya sat near the middle. Duyul stood at the back. He had chosen the back on purpose. He did not want to turn Kaylin's day into a Duyul event.
No visible guards.
No black procession.
No luxury announcement.
Just one man in a dark suit standing where he could leave if his presence became too much. Kaylin saw him before walking across the stage. For a second, his expression did not change. Then he stepped out of line. Mireya stiffened. Duyul did too. Kaylin walked down the side aisle toward him. The room murmured softly. He stopped in front of Duyul. You can sit with my mother. Duyul could not speak at first. It was not dad. It was not forgiveness wrapped in music. It was not 20 years returned. But it was a seat. It was an invitation. It was more than Duyul had allowed himself to hope for. He nodded once. Thank you. They walked back together. Mireya watched them approach with tears already shining. Duyul sat beside her for the first time in 8 years, not as her husband, not as Seoul's feared boss, not as the man who could command rooms and end wars, but as the father of the young man crossing the stage. Kalen's name was called. Kalen Batiste, not Seo. Duyul stood and clapped anyway. Mireya cried quietly. Duyul reached toward her hand, then stopped. He did not know if he still had the right. Mireya looked down at his hand. Then she placed hers in it. On stage, Kalen looked at them. For one breath, the three of them existed without forged letters, hidden boxes, stolen years, or family names sharp enough to wound. They were not healed. Not completely. Maybe they never would be. But they were no longer separated by silence. They were a family beginning too late, but beginning anyway.